go.
This time we're heading north. Way north.
To Alaska.
To Alaska. And I got to say, I'm really excited about this one. It's a state that I think captures the imagination like no other.
Oh, yeah. It definitely has that mystique, the last frontier and all that.
Yeah. So when we talk about Alaska, we often think of it as this untouched wilderness.
Right. Pristine nature.
But, human history there goes back, well, millennia.
Way further back than most people realize.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Just how far back are we talking?
We're talking about the very first Americans.
Whoa, okay, so like the very first.
Yeah, there's a strong belief that Alaska was the entry point for the initial settlement of North America.
You mean like the Bering Land Bridge?
Exactly. During the last ice age, that land bridge connected Siberia and Alaska.
So people could literally walk across.
They could, and they did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a quick stopover. They settled there, established deep roots.
Wow, so Alaska wasn't just a pit stop on the way to the rest of the Americas.
No, it was the starting point. And they created diverse and incredibly sophisticated cultures.
I mean, this isn't just some footnote in a textbook, right? We often use the term Native Alaskans.
Yeah, as kind of catch-all phrase.
Right, but it sounds like that oversimplifies things, doesn't it?
It does. There are so many distinct groups, each with their own unique traditions and heritage.
Like, can you give us some examples?
Sure, groups like the Tlingit, the Haida, the Tsimshian, they all have their own languages, social structures, art forms. It's really remarkable.
It's like a continent within a state. So we've got this incredible tapestry of cultures, all rooted in Alaska going back thousands of years.
Right, it was a cultural melting pot long before European contact.
And then, of course, along came Russia.
Enter the Russian Empire.
Yeah, so how did Russian America come to be? I mean, how did they end up with Alaska?
Well, the fur trade played a big role. The Russian-American company, basically a trading powerhouse with the Tsar's backing, set their sights on Alaska's rich fur resources.
Ah, so it was all about those luxurious furs.
Yeah, sea otter pelts were especially prized. They established settlements, trading posts, and the most prominent one became Sitka.
Sitka, okay.
Originally called New Archangel, it became the capital of Russian America.
So not just a trading outpost, but a full-fledged colonial capital.
Exactly. You had grand Orthodox churches, a blend of Russian and indigenous populations, and a pretty complex social hierarchy.
Fascinating. But maintaining this vast and remote colony, I imagine it couldn't have been easy.
No, it was a logistical nightmare. The costs were mounting, fur resources were dwindling, and the threat of British expansion loomed over them.
So they were feeling the pressure.
Yeah, and they saw an opportunity to cash out.
Which brings us to Seward's Folly. But there's got to be more to it than just a bad real estate deal, right?
Right. Secretary of State William Seward was an ardent expansionist. He saw the strategic value of Alaska, its vast resources, and its proximity to Asia.
So it wasn't just about the land itself, but its potential, its geopolitical importance.
Exactly. And he believed in America's destiny to expand westward.
Manifest destiny, right? And so in 1867, the deal was done.
Alaska became American territory for a bargain price of $7.2 million.
A steal, some would say. But I bet most Americans at the time couldn't have imagined what this frozen wasteland would become.
Yeah, the icebox, they called it. Little did they know.
And then, of course, gold was discovered.
The Klondike Gold Rush changed everything.
Yeah, it was like a switch flipped.
Suddenly, this worthless purchase was a land of opportunity.
A gold rush that brings to mind images of, prospectors, saloons, all that Wild West imagery.
That's pretty accurate. It was a chaotic and exciting time. Towns boomed overnight, and Alaska's population exploded.
So from a sparsely populated Russian colony to, a gold rush frenzy.
Exactly. It was a complete transformation. And with this influx of people, the need for more formal governance became apparent.
Right, because you can't just have this free-for-all forever.
Exactly. And that led to a significant development in Alaska's journey to statehood.
Okay, so did this gold rush lead directly to statehood?
Not quite yet. In 1912, Alaska became a U.S. territory.
Okay, so a step in the right direction.
A big step. It meant greater autonomy, more self-governance.
And what about the capital? Did it stay in Sitka?
No, it moved to Juneau, closer to the gold fields and reflecting the shifting economic and political landscape.
Interesting. So Juneau became the new center of power. Okay, so we've got Alaska as a territory, a gold rush in full swing. Things are moving along. But then the world plunges into war.
World War II, a turning point for Alaska and the world.
And even remote Alaska wasn't spared.
Right, it became strategically crucial.
So how did World War II impact Alaska? I mean, we don't often hear about that aspect of the war.
It's often overlooked, but it was a pivotal moment. The Aleutian Islands campaign, though relatively small in scale, demonstrated Alaska's strategic importance.
Right, because it's right there, close to Asia.
Exactly. And the U.S. had to defend its territory from Japanese advances.
So battles were fought on Alaskan soil.
There were, and the U.S. military presence in Alaska surged. This led to massive infrastructure development, new industries, and a significant population boom.
So the war, in a way, catapulted Alaska onto the national stage.
It did. It accelerated its path towards statehood.
Okay, so World War II ends, and how long until Alaska finally achieves statehood?
Just a few years. In 1959, Alaska became the 49th state.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable.
It is, and it's interesting to note that this coincided with a global wave of decolonization. The Alaska Statehood Act, while granting statehood, also addressed, albeit imperfectly, the issue of Indigenous land rights.
So a landmark moment, but also the beginning of, well, some ongoing debates and struggles.
Absolutely. It set the stage for many of the issues that Alaska continues to grapple with today.
And speaking of struggles, just a few years after achieving statehood, Alaska faced a monumental challenge, right?
The 1964 Good Friday earthquake, a devastating event.
I can only imagine. Tell me more about it.
It was the fourth most powerful earthquake ever recorded, a magnitude of 9.2.
Wow, 9.2.
It unleashed unimaginable destruction upon Alaska's south-central coast. Entire communities were leveled, tsunamis swept across coastal towns, and the landscape itself was permanently altered.
I mean, it's hard to even fathom the scale of that devastation.
It was a defining moment for Alaska, a test of its resilience.
And amidst all that destruction, I wonder, was there any silver lining, any positive outcomes that emerged?
There was a surge in scientific inquiry. Geologist Lydia Selkreg, a pioneer in her field, led the charge.
So trying to understand what happened to prevent future tragedies.
Exactly. Her meticulous damage assessments, combined with her understanding of seismic activity, shaped the rebuilding efforts. They focused on creating more resilient communities.
So this tragedy, in a way, fueled scientific progress.
It did. It forced people to confront the powerful forces at play in this dynamic environment.
And I guess it also showed the importance of science and expertise in responding to such disasters.
Absolutely. Having that knowledge and understanding was crucial for rebuilding and preparing for the future.
And this leads us to another turning point, the discovery of oil.
Prudhoe Bay, 1968, a game changer for sure.
Yeah, the oil boom that followed transformed Alaska's economy.
It brought in massive revenue, created jobs, and fueled infrastructure development on a huge scale.
Right, but I imagine it also brought its share of challenges.
Definitely. It ignited debates about environmental protection, responsible resource management, and the long-term sustainability of Alaska's development.
So we see Alaska grappling with these complex issues, trying to balance economic growth with environmental stewardship. And it raises a pivotal question. How did they manage this newfound wealth? What did they do with all that oil money?
That's where the Alaska Permanent Fund comes in. It's a really unique experiment in resource management.
The Permanent Fund, okay.
It's a sovereign wealth fund financed primarily by oil revenues. It was designed to benefit current and future generations of Alaskans.
So it's like a giant savings account for the state.
Exactly. And every eligible resident receives an annual dividend from its earnings.
Wow, so it's like everyone shares in the wealth.
In a way, yes. It's a way to ensure that the benefits of oil revenue are distributed broadly.
I gotta say, that's a pretty unique approach. Has it been successful?
Well, it's certainly been a source of both pride and debate. Some argue the dividend should be larger, while others say more should be invested in infrastructure or education. It reflects a tension between immediate benefits and long-term sustainability. Now, when we talk about Alaska, I think it's important to really grasp its sheer size.
Yeah, we keep saying vast, but I mean, can you give us a sense of scale? Like, how big are we talking?
Imagine this. You take Texas, California, and Montana, and you combine them all together. That's roughly the size of Alaska.
Wow, okay, That's huge.
It's the largest state in the U.S. by far, and it's not just big, it's incredibly diverse. You've got towering mountain ranges, glaciers, sprawling tundra, and even lush rainforests along the coast. It's really a land of extremes.
You mentioned mountains, and I know Alaska's home to Denali, North America's highest peak.
Right, Denali. It's an iconic landmark, rising over 20,000 feet above sea level.
20,000 feet, that's wow.
It's awe-inspiring. And then you've got the Bering Glacier, the largest glacier in North America.
Okay, so how big is that?
It covers a mind-boggling 2,000 square miles. Think about that. A glacier the size of a small country.
I mean, those are some serious geographic wonders. And I was reading about this place called Turnagain Arm. It's south of Anchorage, right?
Yes, Turnagain Arm. It's a narrow waterway known for its incredible tidal range.
They say it has some of the world's largest tides.
That's right. Picture this, a 35-foot difference between high and low tide.
35 feet. That's got to be dramatic.
It's a sight to behold. The water rushes in and out with incredible force, creating these powerful currents and whirlpools.
Wow. Okay, so Alaska's got these incredible landscapes, this vastness, but I imagine that also means its population is relatively small, right?
It is compared to its size, but what it lacks in sheer numbers, it makes up for in diversity.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, Alaska has a significant indigenous population, representing a rich tapestry of cultures and traditions that have thrived there for centuries.
Right, we talked about those different groups earlier, the Tlingit, the Haida, the Tsimshian.
Exactly, and many more. And as we discussed, there's a lasting legacy of Russian influence from the colonial period. So you have this really unique cultural blend.
It's like a microcosm of, well, of human history and cultural exchange.
Yeah.
And how does this diversity manifest in the languages spoken across Alaska?
While English is the official language, there are over 20 indigenous languages that are recognized. Unfortunately, many of these languages are facing challenges as younger generations increasingly shift towards English.
Right, that loss of language, it's a concern in many indigenous communities around the world.
It is. It represents a loss of cultural heritage and knowledge. But there are ongoing efforts to revitalize these languages and pass them on to future generations.
What kind of efforts?
Well, the University of Alaska Fairbanks plays a vital role. They have the Alaska Native Language Center, which focuses on research, education, and language preservation.
So trying to document and revitalize these languages before they're lost?
Exactly. It's a race against time, but there's a lot of passion and dedication behind these efforts.